Now, this Nord Stream story has developed. I'm just going to show a couple of slides to give people a bit of background on it. On February the 8th, we saw Seymour Hersh, the famous investigative reporter, with a story how America took out the Nord Stream pipeline. New York Times called it a mystery, but the United States executed a covert sea operation that was kept secret until now. However, last week we had this story in the Guardian. Officials believe pro-Ukraine group may have sabotaged Nord Stream. Kremlin dismisses tentative intelligence from European and US agencies as a bid by the perpetrators to divert attention. Now, Kit, what's your view? Firstly, is Seymour Hersh right on this, or is the Guardian possibly right? And can you tell us the background? Sorry, can you just tell us the background to the Nord Stream? What happened? How important is it? Why is this an issue?
I mean, sure. So, I mean, Nord Stream 2 was built at great expense as a part of a joint enterprise by Germany and Russia. The US and the UK absolutely hated it, and they tried to do everything they possibly could to prevent its construction and implementation. There was an enormous amount of pressure applied to countries like Denmark to block it and prevent it being built, just in their territorial waters. And then, it finally, after many years, went ahead, but then you have the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, so its flows were stopped, and then mysteriously it was subject to a terrorist attack. In the immediate aftermath, it was quite clear that there was no kind of pre-agreed narrative. So you had some people who narrative managers, whether they're journalists or think tank pundits or even politicians, who suggested that it was an accident. And then you had people like Władysław Sikorski, who was a neocon and Polish MEP and former Polish government official, who tweeted out saying, "Thank you, USA." This was deleted after some backlash, which suggests that yes, that there was no pre-rehearsed script for regime change actors to operate from. It's remained a mystery ever since, until a few weeks ago, Seymour Hersh, the investigative legend, published a lengthy expose on the processes leading up to this act, the greatest act of industrial sabotage in modern history. And I mean, it's just quite remarkable that it was allowed to just kind of wither as a story. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary. But I mean, he put together a timeline narrative in which the Biden administration really wanted to do this and was having a number of large top level meetings trying to work out some kind of justification legally for doing so, and trying to identify a mechanism to achieve this. I wasn't convinced, I must say, because I mean, Britain was missing from the story, and I mean, as followers of the Grayzone UK will be aware, it is Britain that is leading the charge in terms of ramping up tensions and an escalation in the proxy war. And indeed, it's quite clear that the Biden administration is perceived by Britain and presumably Poland and the Baltic states as well, there's other mad dogs on the continent, as being extremely and overly cautious and refusing to truly get involved in the proxy war in a kind of proactive way. So the notion that the Biden administration was actually very, very keen to do this, which was an act of brinkmanship that even the CIA allegedly thought was insanity. I mean, it seemed like it was putting up a smoke screen, and then you now have a number of reports in the mainstream media that in fact it wasn't the Biden administration at all, but it was a unknown group of pro-Ukrainians, which seems like an even more kind of brazen and dishonest arse covering exercise. So this is based on briefings, anonymous briefings from nameless officials who refuse to give much in the way of detail, right down to how credible they think this story is. and how much weight they place on this evidence. But they think that, yes, it was a pro-Ukrainian group that was not tied to any state, and was acting without any kind of prior authorization from Kiev. And they don't know who these people were or even what nationality they were, but they definitely weren't British or American, interestingly. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely farcical. And
can I just interrupt you, because I noticed, I mean, I've seen on some of the information on this. Someone's uncovered what the vessel was that went to sabotage.
Well, no, I was about to get into that.
This is the high-tech vessel that's supposed to have gone out there to blow up the Nord Stream. I mean, how is it that we're supposed to swallow this kind of nonsense? Why?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I was about to say. Is that the story's gotten like more comical since then. So apparently, this group of private actors who may or may not have ties to the Ukrainian security service, we don't know, but they were definitely not British or American, rented this rather small private yacht to carry out the bombing. I mean, from the photo you just displayed, it would be a miracle if they could get the necessary divers on that, let alone the thousands of pounds of explosive that would be necessary to blow up concrete encased pipelines, which, you know, had sabotage, you know, factored into their construction. You know, it beggars belief, really. And so, yeah, we're no closer to the truth, although I think that by offering a vague yet also ever so slightly precise narrative of what happened, they're setting themselves up for, and the people who did this are setting themselves up for an enormous amount of problems. And what's really striking is that Zelensky has, you know, very angrily declared publicly that, oh yes, no Ukrainian had anything to do with this. Now, I would suggest, and my friend and colleague Aaron Mate takes the same view, that effectively this was a US or US and British proxy strike that they are now blaming on their proxy warrior in the form of Ukraine. And to my mind, this is readying the ground for Ukraine being thrown under the bus. Like, you know, we're getting what started as a trickle is now becoming a deluge of mainstream media acknowledgements that actually, far from this heroic David and Goliath battle where Ukraine is pulling off all of these stunning underdog successes, it's in fact, you know, a totally brutal, senseless bloodbath, which is achieving very little, and apart from getting an enormous number of Ukrainians killed, and it's completely unwinnable. And actually, it's every day this goes on, the risk of nuclear war, you know, grows, even if ever so slightly. So it seemed, and there was a report, I think it was in February, by RAND, which is a very influential Pentagon think tank, which effectively said, okay, well, the US needs to get out of this now for a variety of reasons, not least because they need to prepare for war with China, and this is taking up too much of their time. And it said, you know, the information ground needs to be laid for US withdrawal from this. So it's not an immediate overnight kind of Afghanistan style with bailout, but you need to kind of slowly prepare US allies for the fact that yes, that this is over, and over a period of weeks or months. So I mean, this seems to be, yes, a very clear example of that in practice.
I mean, just to finish, do you think Seymour Hersh's expose, do you think that's actually been a game changer in the whole thing?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's certainly prompted the people who actually did this to come up with an alternative explanation for what happened. I mean, again, it's quite remarkable. We had weeks of mainstream media stories in the wake of this suggesting it was Russia who did this, despite the fact this didn't make any logical sense. And I think that seemed to stick, that the politicians and journalists were not asking questions. They were happy with that. But yes, now the Seymour Hersh article has kind of forced them to break cover, even if in this absolutely pathetic way.